Tonight, the Middle East looks closer to a broader regional war than at any point in recent memory, after Israel said it killed Iran's security chief Ali Larijani, and the shock from that strike is now rippling far beyond the battlefield, into Gulf airspace, oil markets, and the daily lives of millions, watching this conflict grow more dangerous by the hour. What makes this moment so explosive is not only the strike itself, but what came after it. Within hours, Iranian retaliation intensified. Missile alarms sounded again, air defenses were activated across multiple countries, and the sense that this war could stay contained began to give way to a much darker question. How many fronts are opening at once? According to Reuters, Israel's defense minister said on March 17th that Ali Larijani had been killed in an Israeli strike. At that moment, Iran had not publicly confirmed it. Even so, the claim alone immediately raised the stakes, because Larijani was not just another official. He sat near the center of Iran's security decision-making at a wartime moment. Associated Press reporting went further, describing Larijani as one of the most powerful figures in Iran since the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on the first day of this war. AP also reported the killing of Basij commander Gholam Reza Soleimani, giving the impression of a targeted blow aimed not just at Iranian forces, but at the political and internal security structure holding the system together. That is why this story matters. A strike on a missile battery is one thing. A strike on senior leadership is something else entirely. When a war moves from infrastructure to individuals at the top, retaliation becomes more likely. Miscalculation becomes more likely. And every military move carries more symbolic weight than the one before it. Iran's response, at least in part, was swift. AP reported that Iran launched what it said were multiple warhead missiles towards central Israel, and Israel's medical service said 2 people were killed in Ramat Gan, east of Tel Aviv. That means this is no longer just a story about what happened inside Iran. It is now a story about how many capitals can be pulled into the same cycle of action and reprisal. And the battlefield is no longer limited to Israel and Iran. Reuters and AP both described a wider regional spillover. Drones and rockets at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, Iranian missile and drone threats reaching the United Arab Emirates, and continued pressure on the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important shipping lanes on the planet. That combination changes the character of the war. When older viewers hear that phrase, Strait of Hormuz, they understand immediately why markets react so violently. This is not a remote name on a map. It is an energy choke point tied to fuel prices, shipping costs, and the broader global economy. Roughly a fifth of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas normally moves through that narrow corridor between Iran and Oman. Reuters reported that Iran has largely shut the strait, while AP described shipping through Hormuz as slowed to a trickle. In practical terms, that means the war is now pressing on 2 pressure points at the same time: military escalation in the air and economic disruption at sea. Wars become much harder to contain when they hit both security and energy at once. That is also why the United Arab Emirates suddenly matters so much in this story. AP reported that explosions sounded over Dubai as the UAE military worked to intercept incoming Iranian fire, and that the country briefly closed its airspace before reopening it. In a modern regional conflict, airspace closures are not just a military detail. They are a public signal that danger has crossed borders. Reuters added that the UAE has faced repeated Iranian attacks, and that more than 2,000 people have been killed across the region since the war began on February 28th, most of them in Iran and Lebanon, but also in Israel, Iraq, and the Gulf. That tells us this is no longer a narrow exchange. It is a multi-theater confrontation with expanding consequences. Another reason this moment feels so combustible is the attack on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Reuters reported that rockets and at least 5 drones were launched toward American diplomatic facilities there, with the embassy attack described as the most intense since the start of the war. A Reuters witness saw 3 drones approaching, 2 intercepted, while one struck inside the compound and caused fire and smoke. That image matters because it compresses the whole crisis into one scene: a fortified embassy, automated defenses firing into the night, drones breaking through, and smoke rising inside the green zone. It is a reminder that in modern conflict, pressure is applied everywhere at once, against military sites, political symbols, commercial targets, and the logistics networks that hold states together. To understand why these attacks are getting through at all, it helps to look at the technical side. Air defense networks are designed in layers. Long-range systems watch for ballistic threats, medium layers handle some drones and cruise missiles, and close-in systems, like the CRAM in Baghdad, are built for the final desperate seconds when a threat is already almost on top of the target. That layered design can be formidable, but it also has limits. If several threats arrive from different directions, at different altitudes, and at different speeds, operators are forced to allocate interceptors under severe time pressure. The problem grows worse when drones, rockets, and missiles are mixed together, because each type creates a different tracking and engagement challenge. Iran appears to understand that logic very well. AP reported that Iranian attacks involved missiles and drones not only against Israel, but against Gulf Arab nations as well. The strategic message is clear even without accepting every claim from either side. Tehran wants to show that pressure on Iran can be answered not at one single point, but across a broad and politically sensitive regional map. There is another layer here that deserves attention. Reuters reported that Gulf producers are scrambling to bypass Hormuz, with Saudi Arabia pushing more crude through its east-west pipeline, and the UAE increasing flows through the Habshan-Fujairah line. That tells us states around the Gulf are already acting as if prolonged disruption is possible, not merely preparing for a brief shock. And once governments start rerouting oil, insurers start repricing risk, airlines start revising routes, and businesses start modeling shortages, the war enters a new phase. Now, Reuters reported that major airports, including Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Doha, have been closed during the crisis, disrupting pharmaceutical air routes and threatening time-sensitive supply chains such as cancer medicines. That is how regional war starts touching ordinary life far away. Financial markets are reflecting that fear. AP reported Brent crude staying above $100 a barrel, while Reuters said oil remained elevated and added to inflation concerns. For many Americans, that is the part that makes a distant war feel immediate. A shock in the Gulf can become a cost at the gas pump, a freight surcharge, a food price increase, and yet another pressure on household budgets. This is where the story shifts from a dramatic military episode to a strategic turning point. Israel appears to be trying to degrade Iran's command structure. Iran appears determined to prove it can keep firing and widen the field of risk. The United States is hitting Iranian missile sites near Hormuz. Gulf states are hardening defenses while trying to keep trade moving. Each player is now managing both war and escalation control at the same time. But there is a crucial distinction viewers should keep in mind. Some things are confirmed. Reuters reported Israel's claim that Larijani was killed, and AP reported Iranian missile fire causing deaths in central Israel. AP also confirmed the UAE briefly closed its airspace, while Reuters confirmed the Baghdad embassy came under renewed drone and rocket attack. Those are major facts shaping the moment. Other elements remain less clear and need caution. Iran did not initially confirm Larijani's death when Reuters first reported Israel's claim. In fast-moving wars, casualty numbers can change. The exact sequence of retaliation can be disputed, and each side has strong incentives to shape the narrative. The danger is real, but so is the fog surrounding any story told in real time during a conflict like this. That is precisely why this war has become so difficult to read. Militarily, Israel and the United States are trying to show reach and initiative. Politically, Iran is trying to show survivability and retaliatory capacity. Economically, the Strait of Hormuz gives Tehran leverage even when its own infrastructure is under pressure. Psychologically, Every intercepted drone and every visible strike sends a message far beyond the immediate target. For American viewers in particular, and the Baghdad attack carries extra weight. Once U.S. diplomatic compounds and military-linked facilities are under recurring drone and rocket threat, the chance of deeper American involvement rises, whether Washington wants it or not. Even limited defensive responses can create new casualties, new targets, and new demands for retaliation, especially once smoke is rising from an embassy compound. There is also the question of endurance. Reuters reported that Middle East oil exports dropped at least 60% in the week leading up to March 15th, as Hormuz stayed mostly closed. If that kind of disruption continues, governments will not just be dealing with military signaling. They will be dealing with storage constraints, export bottlenecks, refinery stress, and the political fallout of higher energy costs at home. And yet the war's endpoint remains deeply uncertain. Reuters reported that a senior Iranian official said the country's new supreme leader had rejected de-escalation proposals passed through intermediary nations. That matters because wars become more dangerous when back-channel exits narrow. If diplomacy is stalled while missile exchanges continue, the room for accidental widening only grows. The broader pattern is becoming harder to ignore. A senior Iranian leader targeted retaliatory missile fire into Israel. A U.S. embassy struck in Baghdad. UAE airspace briefly shut as interceptions thunder over Dubai. Shipping through Hormuz choked. Oil elevated. Cargo routes disrupted. None of these events alone defines the war. Together, they point to a conflict that is spreading horizontally across the region and vertically through the global economy. So the key question is no longer simply who hit whom last night. The real question is whether the current players still believe they can calibrate this conflict, or whether they are entering a phase where every attempt to restore deterrence produces a bigger and more dangerous response. History suggests that once leaders begin targeting command structures and economic choke points, control becomes far more fragile. If there is one takeaway tonight, it is this. The danger is no longer confined to dramatic footage of missiles and air defenses. The danger now includes ports, pipelines, embassies, airports, shipping insurance, and the political pressures that come with every new strike. This is what a modern regional war looks like when military escalation and economic disruption begin feeding each other. And that is why the next moves matter so much. If Iran keeps pressure on Israel, Gulf infrastructure, and maritime traffic, the conflict broadens further. If Israel continues decapitation-style strikes, the leadership dimension becomes even more explosive. If the United States is drawn deeper by attacks on its personnel or facilities, the war could shift again. The battlefield is expanding faster than diplomacy is containing it. For now, the clearest picture is not one of resolution, but of accumulation. More fronts, more targets, more risk, more uncertainty. The reported killing of Ali Larijani may be remembered not as an isolated headline, but as one of those moments when an already dangerous war began to look like something larger, harder to control, and much more consequential for the world watching from far beyond the Middle East.